What in the world is going on?
Today's podcast, current event. Welcome to a grand conversation with Grandpa Diesel and Grandson Raphael, tackling current topics from a grandpa's point of view and from a grandson's point of view. Welcome. Hello, I'm Grandpa Diesel.
I'm Grandson Raphael.
And we have a guest back.
Hey, it's me, Mitch.
It's Mitch is back. Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Mitch is back. So, like we said, we're going to talk about current topics of the day. But, you guys, this might change how you live your life. Something I discovered.
What?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, you can put popcorn kernels in a brown paper bag, put it in the microwave, and pop popcorn, and it'll come out without using oil, butter, or anything.
Ooh.
Really?
Yep.
That's cool.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I actually didn't know that.
Did you know that, Mitch? Okay. All right.
That's a useful tip.
Well, yeah. So now everybody knows that. Stick it in a bag in the microwave. All right. So we are going to talk about some current topics of the day, and one of the big topics has been the election that just happened last week. One of the big elections was the new mayor. Ralph, say his name?
Zoran Mamdani.
Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah.
Zoran Mamdani.
All right.
Donnie.
So, let's hear it, guys. What do you think? What do you think of his policy? So the main policies that I've seen are he promises free child care, free public buses, rent freezes, and city-owned grocery stores.
Yeah.
And 200,000 new affordable housing units over the next decade.
Yeah. That's one of his main points in his campaign is affordability for New Yorkers so that they can actually live in the city, which is one of the biggest cities in the U.S., one of the major cities, and still it's super unaffordable. So that was part of the reason he won, is because he didn't campaign on like social issues like a lot of other people. He campaigned on affordability because I think people are tired of social issues and they're seeing, okay, we've done a ton of years of talking about, okay, this social issue and that social issue, and it's not fixed any of our problems. We need something different. And he actually spoke to what the people want to hear and want to have changed in their lives, which I think is why he won.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good point. We're not talking about the social issues as far as his candidacy. We're talking about his policy position. So, you have any thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his policies and stuff I do agree with, quite a bit of his policies, especially just making New York more affordable. What he says on his website, Trump-proofing NYC, I support that. Just like, stuff like that. I feel like my main concern, though, with his plans and his campaign is that his plans might be too idealistic. Or what I mean is that, like, obviously a lot of people like his plans because people in New York want to live in a more affordable city. So a lot of people like his plans, but I worry that he might have to, like, in order to, like, enact them, he may have to, like, raise taxes. Like, he says he has other ways to do it, like shifting revenue streams and just, like, shifting the funding of the city. But I worry that, like, that might not be enough to enact his plans, and that he might have to, like, start taxing the citizens of New York even more, which is what my main concern is. But everything else I do agree with, and I was watching his campaign trail very keenly.
Oh, you were? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm keeping up on it.
Yeah, he seems like I also agree with most of his policy positions. I think if he can actually implement them, it'll be great for New York, and I think it will also not just influence New York, but also the entire United States, because it marks a shift. Zoran winning is something shows a shift in the way the Democratic Party and left-wing politics are in the United States. And I think it can actually change. It's like a breath of fresh air, and it can change the way the Democratic Party and the left operates in the United States.
Okay, so I think, Raph, at the beginning when we first started this podcast series, we talked about the different generations from I was born in 1956, you were born in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at this, I see this idealistic kind of vision to help all these people. But maybe it's the older generation in me, but like practically, how can this possibly happen? Like he would, okay, so say the free food in the grocery stores, he would have to get that funding from somewhere and all the other things that he wants, and there's only so much money to shift. So to me, he eventually is going to have to propose to raise taxes, and then if his plan is to raise taxes on those who are wealthy, those people are, if it gets to a point where it doesn't make sense for them to stay in New York, they'll just leave, so that would lower the tax base. And I heard this one, somebody made a comment on central planning, which is basically, this is a type of central planning where the government is centrally trying to kind of control all these aspects of society. And the question is, what happens when the government runs out of money to offer these services? Like let's say particularly the grocery store. So people are getting free food, and then people start leaving New York, and people, there's not the tax base, you don't have the funds anymore. And then he says, okay, we got to start charging for the food. Well, if people are dependent on that food and haven't paid for, say, 2 years, what's going to happen when they find out that the government's now saying you have to pay for it, or the government's now saying, well, we can't offer as much food? So those are some of the aspects I'm looking at as far as more long term. I don't know, any thoughts on that? Or
So he actually, part of his proposal to actually fund this is to raise taxes, you're right, on corporations and the wealthy. So he says he's going to match New Jersey's 11.5% corporate tax rate, which will bring in $5 billion, and will tax the wealthiest 1% of New Yorkers who earn above $1 million annually. Flat 2% tax, which the New York City's income taxes aren't actually that good, it seems like, according to what his website says. And it'll also do crack down on fine collection and hire more tax auditors and stuff. So, but if you look at it, he's not going to raise the taxes that much, and where he is raising it a decent amount, like New Jersey's 11.5% is what he's matching for New York City. That is something that's already been implemented in New Jersey. So it's not something like super outlandish. He's not like doing a 99% tax or anything. 2% tax on the 1% of New Yorkers, 11.5% tax on corporations, the corporate tax rate. And if
so wait, you're saying 11.5% addition, 11.5%?
No, he's just raising it to match New Jersey's 11.5%. It's just going to be the same. Okay. It's 11.5%.
Gotcha.
So, and to me, it seems like you say, okay, these people, these wealthy people, these corporations, they might leave. But to me, it seems like it would be less profitable to leave, because either you can pay that 1% extra tax or on yourself, or the 11.5% tax on your corporation, or you can move, relocate all of your business, everything away to an entirely different area. And New York is one of the capitals of business. Everyone knows about like how New York's the business land, basically, mm-hmm. right? And so it's such an important place for businesses and things like that I think it would ultimately be less profitable and less intelligent of a move to actually move out of New York, which is why I don't think people will actually leave. And I mean, the amount of money he's saying he's going to bring in $5 billion from the corporate tax rate, and he doesn't say how much he's going to bring in from the taxing the 1%, but that's going to be a lot of money that I think can be used to actually fund a lot of these programs he's thinking about. And he does have a lot of grassroots support, which I think could also help implement that. he's going to have the support of the public behind him, which will better help him implement his policies.
So you think the public will be okay with increased taxes?
Well, the taxes aren't on the pub. The taxes are on the 1%, people who make over $1 million annually, or the corporations, which is not the general people. That's not the majority. Like, it's the 1% of New Yorkers. There's 99% of the other people aren't getting their taxes raised, and even the 1% who are, it's only by slightly more. So, it's really not enough to turn anyone against him, I think.
Got any thoughts? Any more thoughts on that, Mitch?
Yeah, there's also like other ways, like I kind of mentioned this earlier. There's other ways there's other ways for him to fund some of his policies, like Nathan Gusdorf, sorry, who was like the executive director of the Fiscal Party Policy Institute. He interviewed him, and according to what he found, a lot of his plans include just shifting the $116 billion budget that New York gets, and just like shifting certain priorities in that budget to other things that would match his programs.
Does he have any specifics though? That's my only concern. Like, is he going to shift money away from, like, say, law enforcement? Is that his plan, or is it where?
From what
did he ever? I just wonder. Did he ever specifically state?
I think he just shifted the priorities away from things that don't make as much money.
Yeah.
And that don't have that good of an outcome, and just shifted to more important things that he sees, like affordable housing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think he is trying. I from his campaign, because in the past he made comments about, like, oh, the police are racist or whatever, which he's sort of gone back on now. And he's not, to me, his campaign didn't really seem to be targeting law enforcement or anything like that. So I don't think he's going to be cutting major things like that. I think at most he's going to be reallocating some funds to a thing related to the thing he's reallocating funds from.
Yeah, and I think, he'd get a lot of pushback if he was trying to, say, transfer funds from law enforcement to something else. I think the public or whoever is going to push back. Well, I think I could just, I don't know, I feel like it's the only thing we can say is time will tell, right?
Yeah.
So is it going to be a success or a failure of these plans? Okay, so another topic that's in the news is the government shutdown.
Oh boy.
Yikes.
How has that affected you guys?
Not much.
At all?
Not much that I can
You
tell.
say not much. Does that mean a little bit, or?
Not really at all. I mean,
yeah.
it just mainly has affected other people, from what other like less fortunate people. Raphael actually could probably go into the SNAP benefits that we were looking at.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So
it.
yeah, that's a good. So do you know anybody personally that works for the government that got, like, laid off or isn't getting a paycheck?
Not personally, but
and that would be tough if somebody that was their job and they didn't expect this to happen, and all of a sudden they don't get a paycheck and they have a family.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
From what I sound like, though, like thousands of like government workers were like fired because of this. Yeah, like over from this article I have from NPR, over 1 million federal workers are working without paychecks, and another roughly 600,000 have been furloughed. Furloughed.
That's right.
And although a 2019 law ensures they are entitled to back pay after the shutdown is over, recent comments by President Trump have left many worried about whether that will still happen. Yeah, I know about this. Trump, in like an interview, I think it was like a 60-minute interview, he was talking about how he might like go back on that law or something, and basically not give these workers back pay after the shutdown, which is not good. Mm-hmm. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, my gut is that it's not going to happen, but maybe it's more of a threat to get the vote out there. But so these people get the back pay, but to not have that check come in if they're relying on that paycheck next week and it doesn't come, so that may be kind of tough. But so one of the big issues with the government shutdown was the stopping of SNAP benefits. So Raph, can you explain SNAP?
SNAP is basically just food stamps.
Do you have a definition?
So SNAP is from the official government website.
Okay.
SNAP provides food benefits to low-income families to supplement their grocery budget so they can afford the nutritious food essential to health and well-being. And it's basically supplemental nutrition's program to help lower income people or people who can't actually get the food they need.
Oh, yeah. So that was a big deal, and I heard one figure of 40 million people are on SNAP.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, immediately you could think, I guess, 40 million people. Do all of these people, do they need to be on SNAP? and maybe it's me and being from the older generation, but I'm thinking I don't think there are 40 million people that need to be on SNAP. I think there are people that really need it, rely on it, they have families, but do 40 million people need to be on that? So I think one thing with all of this is, I think we need to look at, like, who's getting SNAP benefits, what are the criteria, what are the income levels that you can get it. And the other thing I think of too is, you know, the church, we are the church, and our responsibility to feed the poor. And to it's interesting because we have our monthly, or no, it's every other week, or it's called the Register in our diocese, and there was an article about Pope Leo and some things he has said. And if I gleaned from the article correctly, one thing he was saying was for the poor people, that we've provided them with technology and they have access to all this technology and things, but yet they're deficient in their basic needs, food, maybe food, clothes, shelter, or whatever. And it's like, well, I feel like, you know, the church has, in one sense, we being the church, we have kind of given our responsibility over to the government, so I'll let the government take care of them. And we haven't personally been invested in helping the poor. I know I volunteer at a local food bank, and so people could come in once a week, but starting this month, they could only come in like every other week or twice a month. So that was kind of a big deal, I think, for some people would be, because if they're relying on this food every week to come in and stock their shelves or feed their family, now it's only, you know, once every 2 weeks. So the question is, where do we as the church, where do we as Christians fit into helping the poor? Are we doing what we need to do or not? And, you know, personally, I could say I'm not doing enough. You know, we need to do more. So I don't know, any thoughts on that, and SNAP and the government and the church?
Yeah, I do feel like I do think Pope Leo's recent comments and his recent documents have been very important, I guess, to his career as Pope, or because I feel like Pope Francis was kind of a pope based on like humility, where you're like wanting the church to become more humble and less prideful, which is super important. And I feel like Pope Leo is kind of like a pope of charity, where he's trying to focus on the church being more charitable to those around us and live out Jesus's example. And I think in one of his recent papal documents, I forget what it's called, he highlighted the importance of the poor in society by referencing the fact that Jesus chose to come down as a poor person. Like, he could have come down as like a
good point.
Rich person, or, you know, but he just chose to come down as someone who was less fortunate. And this does highlight the importance of charity and the importance of just the poor people in society.
Yeah. And like, if you think about it, if he was a wealthy man, he would have had almost certainly much more influence. Like, could have paid for like books or something like that, or had hired people to go out into the streets, but he did it all on his own from like the humble beginnings of a carpenter and all that. So it's just interesting. Right.
And I think, you know, throughout the Bible, it's always a reference to helping the poor. There's always, you know, that aspect of it. And I think sometimes we kind of put that on the back burner, where, and, you know, one idea I have is, you know, if every church would, say, adopt a poor family, that, say somebody gets cut off of SNAP benefits, and then a church would adopt that family, and people in that church would, you know, help them by providing what they needed. So Okay, any other thoughts on so the government's shut down as we are recording this podcast. It's the Senate has voted to continue funding, I think, and then the House has to vote.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And so I think the House vote is coming up this week, and that may be all a moot point after that for a little bit, but I think it's going to be a short-term thing, and we'll probably hear some of the arguments all over again.
Back with the church's responsibility for the poor.
Yeah.
I think it's important just to highlight the fact that the church isn't supposed to be some kind of independent entity or some kind of Tower of Ivory or something like that.
Right.
Like Jesus wasn't some kind of ruler living in a castle who commanded that everyone follows his teachings, but he was someone who was actively involved in the community and actively helped out the community, and that's something that the church needs to do to reflect that part of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a saying I heard years ago. It just reminded me, Mitch. It was, let's see, we don't live in the world and go to church. We live in the church and go to the world. I really like that.
It's just important that Christians remember that fact, that we have to be involved in the community and have to strive for social change that lives in the example of Jesus. And yeah.
Right. And I think Pope Leo, again, I think we talked about it at a podcast, past one, is the Pope Leo that was around during the Industrial Revolution.
Pope Leo the 13th, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And this Pope Leo, so they're focusing on the dignity of each person, that doesn't get lost. So that you had the Industrial Revolution back then, and the Pope Leo back then didn't want the Industrial Revolution to just treat people as just another worker on the assembly line or something, to that effect, but that each person has dignity and is created in the image of God. And I think this Pope Leo is saying the same thing. We have all this technology and things, but we can't miss out on treating each person with dignity and respect and meeting their basic needs, again, such as food, clothing, shelter.
Yeah. And I think this whole government shutdown is kind of, unfortunately, it's caused a lot of people to lose their physiological needs, which are deeply important, as the Pope said.
And I think just as looking at the whole government shutdown thing, I think it could, if the government would just have a budget, pass a budget, live by the budget, then these things wouldn't have to happen. And the other thing I thought of too is we just hear reports in the news about what this side said and what this side said. I think in something like this, they should have had a national debate, both sides, and then they come to some kind of agreement on national TV, because really they're working for us, right? And we should be able to see what's going on, hear the arguments on both sides, and then say, look, work it out. That's what you're elected for. So
yeah,
that's a little naive maybe, but
no, I agree. We as people should be update on this stuff, because it affects us more than anything.
Right. Another topic in the news. Well, yeah, we were just talking is the Israel-Palestine conflict. It seems like we haven't heard a lot in the past week or even 10 days or so, I'm not sure, but there was a lot going on. There's a ceasefire. I think there were some violations from both sides. Hopefully it's going to hold and stick. What are your guys' thoughts?
My thoughts are that the ceasefire, that there's fighting has stopped, is a good thing, but I think it's not favorable for the Palestinians at all. And I think that it's going to turn out bad. One, as you said, it's already been broken quite a bit. Israel, for instance, has been bombing Palestine. It has been destroying land in Palestine. It's shooting at civilians, crossing the yellow line that they're not meant to, and detaining Palestinians as well. So it's called a ceasefire, but in reality, to me, this is less of a ceasefire in actuality and more just nominally a ceasefire.
So what would you like to see happen as the end result of all this?
Are we talking ideally, or are we talking... Okay, ideally, I would hope that the Palestinians would get their state back, and that there could be a society where it's not an ethno-state like Israel is currently, and not apartheid, but rather a democratic state where everyone has equal rights, and the Palestinians can return to their homes that were taken from them in the 1900s.
Yeah.
That would be my position. But yeah, it's just such a brutal war. It's 60,000 over 60,000 Palestinians are dead, and 1,000 over 1,000 Israelis are dead as well.
So how do you think that could be achieved? Like, what would have to happen? Just like peace talks, and then Israel would have to agree to a separate Palestinian state? Is that what you're kind of saying, or?
No, I don't. I don't want a separate state. I want a state, a united state. I want. So Palestine has its own. We currently have a two-state solution with the West Bank and Gaza, and then Israel. But it's clearly not functioning very well. I would say we would merge them back into this territory of historic Palestine, what it actually was before the creation of Israel in the 40s. And I would say that it would be, like I said, it would have to have equal rights, because currently Israel is pretty much just an apartheid regime without equal rights.
Explain that.
Apartheid, so, okay.
No, what do you mean, like, specifically Israel is? What that you're saying?
The way it's set up is basically like there's not equal rights for Palestinians. They evict people forcibly to give their homes to Jewish settlers. Obviously, of course, Israel was colonized by the Zionists in the early 1900s and came into being in the 1940s as an official state. There is also basically tons of racism, government imposed racism. They have something called the Israeli nation-state law, where it basically establishes supremacy over the Arabs and the Palestinians.
But don't you have Arabs and Palestinians living in Israel?
Yes, but basically they're second-class citizens effectively, and so. Like for the Israeli nation-state law, the land of it, it says the land of Israel is historic homeland for the Jewish people, in which the state of Israel was established. The state of Israel is a nation of the Jewish people, in which it realizes its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. The realization of the right to national self-determination in the state of Israel is exclusive to the Jewish people, which is clearly establishing an ethnic hierarchy of placing the Jews above the Arabs or any other group in Israel, which actually, if you look at it, even in the early history, Arab Jews, Jews who were living in the Middle East and stuff, were second-class citizens as well to the European Jews who were considered the best of the best. They, even in the founding of Israel, they wanted to plant like trees from Europe and demolish all the old trees to make it a distinctly European state, which it's an ethnic hierarchy. The Israeli nation-state law clearly shows this is a law in Israel. Their actions show this. Amnesty International has called them an apartheid state. Like, this is something.
But ideally, you're looking at like the Palestinian people having their own territory and government and whatever, correct? I'm not sure.
Okay, so the Palestinians were forced off of their land in the founding of Israel. It was all originally Palestine in pre-1948, I believe.
Okay.
Then Israel came into being after some colonization by the Zionists and all that.
But who gave them that land, though? I thought that kind of was like a world decision.
The UN.
Yeah, the UN.
Okay,
the UN and Britain had promised them land and stuff.
Okay, so they gave them the land.
Yes. And the Palestinians were actually forced out of the land in a lot of situations. Israel sent militias and attacked them. There was fighting. Israel placed bombs in the rubble of Palestinian homes so that they couldn't return.
Okay, so the Palestinians did still have some of their land, but they didn't just have all of the land. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they still had some of their land, but much of their land they were forcibly forced out of, and also the land that they were given by the UN and by Britain and all this was actually, I mean, if you look at it, Jewish people were a minority in Palestine, but they brought in settlers, especially after World War II, which obviously the Holocaust, horrible event. And so a lot of Jews were displaced, and many of these Jews held Zionist beliefs, and so they moved to Israel. Zionism wants a Jewish ethno-state, basically, which would be, in this case, Israel is what they chose. They thought about moving to other places, but eventually they settled on Israel as their state.
But again, okay, so if you were making the decision as how this ends, like what is your proposal, like in a nutshell?
One state solution. The Palestinians can return home. I would try the criminals on both sides for their crimes and give them proper retribution.
When you say one state solution, are you saying Israel and Palestine being in one state?
Yes.
Oh.
I would say most likely the Israeli leadership could not stay, and I would also not place it in the hands of Hamas either.
So like a whole new government?
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know much about the PLO in its modern state, but I believe they govern the West Bank. But I think that you could get together a group to actually govern it. And like I said, I want it to have equal rights for Palestinians, for Arabic people, for Jews, for everyone.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of the one state solution. I've heard of the two state.
Yeah.
What do you think? Any thoughts, Mitch?
It all sounds good to me. I mean, I don't know much about this conflict, if I'm being honest, as much as I should. All I know is that there's a lot of people dying, and I think we should never really be justifying this conflict. It's best, especially us as Americans. Especially us as Christian Americans, we shouldn't really ever, use the Bible and use holy text to justify this conflict and stuff. Like the fact that people have been quote mining Bible verses to justify it is pretty awful.
Yeah.
And it's kind of absurd to consider that some people consider the modern state of Israel the same as the kingdom of Israel in ancient times.
Yeah.
And it's just any way to get the killing to stop at this point. I just kind of wonder with your solution, Raphael.
Yeah.
With the government, would you support an external government I don't know how to describe it, a UN imposed government or something like that, where the UN creates a government, I guess, for these people, or I'm assuming you wouldn't.
I don't. I would want the people in this area to actually govern themselves. I think. They tried having an external force with mandatory Palestine, where Britain basically ruled over it and had a governor, and it just ended up in the situation we're in today. So
yeah, I was just wondering because I've heard people mention that before, just getting an external force as government.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree with you. We need the Palestinian people to.
Yeah, and like you, Mitch, I'm not sure the history. Raph, you seem to have got a better grasp on the history of it. So my take is that Israel historically has been, and they still are, God's chosen people, and that they still have a role to play in God's plan. And I just hope that the current situation will result in no more bloodshed and will result in peace for everyone. But everybody do your own research, right, Raph?
Yeah, of course.
It's always important.
All right. So I want to take a little jump here and it's kind of a current topic because it's an ongoing, is climate change. And I think, again, being two generations, we're taking it looking at different perspectives of it. But the angle I'm looking at is, and I want to get your input, your perspective on climate change, because my kind of opinion is that, yes, there could be some man-made things that are affecting the climate, but that climate in general changes and we just adapt to it, and that all of these dire warnings that we had been hearing, and it seemed like, we're going to get flooded, or we're going to get, the temperature's going to heat so much, and the ice caps are going to melt, and there's this website called Climate Depot, and it just gave 10 predictions that people have had over the years. There's a biologist, an ecologist, and so one of them was that in 1970, somebody warned that 75% to 80% of species would be extinct by 1995. So that was in 1970, so that's wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, there's all these different predictions. There's one about, in 1971, atmospheric scientists at NASA predicted the coming of a new ice age within 50 years. So that was 1971. So that would have been what, 2021?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, so there's all these predictions, and I think, and my concern is that, especially like you guys, that how much do you take this to heart and worry about it? And I think the younger generations have actually, based decisions on thinking the world's going to be severely affected by climate change, and maybe even made decisions on starting families and doing things like that, and people a little older than you, of course. But
Yeah.
so anyway, just to what do you guys think?
I think in general, just having these predictions about the climate in the future are kind of pointless, as you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really ever come true, and they don't really ever come true, and they just kind of lead to like more anxiety and more just like, I guess, just like mental displacement in society. So I also think though that it's important for every person to prepare for events like this, or prepare for like the effects of climate change, because I do think it's real, and I do think quite a bit of it is imposed by man or caused by humanity. So I think it's important for us to prepare for it, especially when it comes to like finding a replacement to fossil fuels, because like in the end, fossil fuels create a lot of waste, and they just like harm the government even more. They harm the environment a lot more than a lot of other forms of energy, such as like renewable energy. So I think it's important for us to find like, but also like renewable energy doesn't really provide that much energy, like, and it's not as effective as fossil fuels. So it's important for us to find some sort of like solution to this, find something that's like effective energy wise and efficient, while also finding something that doesn't harm the environment.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective too, is as God put us here as stewards of the earth, we should do all that we can to make sure that we have as clean as possible and no destruction. Try to not destroy the earth, of course, but to be good stewards of the creation that God has given us. So yeah, we need to be innovative and come up with things. But this is an interesting thing I saw, and it's from zmescience.com. So it talks about the whole article, and you could do the research again. It says that the Amazon's oldest tree, they're bulking up as the carbon dioxide levels rise. So the trees are actually getting bigger. They're like adapting to this increased carbon dioxide, and so trees, they take in the carbon dioxide, and they're actually getting bigger. So I thought, anyway, that was an interesting, like the earth is adapting to, of course, we want to do what we can to, not throw out carbon dioxide. But anyway, I think the earth has some resilience for some minimal changes anyway.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of, like, if we're pointing out predictions that have failed, first thing I would say is we used to think that the earth was the center of the galaxy or whatever, the universe. We used to think all sorts of scientific things that are mistaken, and science progresses as time goes on. Like, predictions are wrong all the time, and that's just a part of the field of study. So the same thing happens with climate change, and we look at it and we make a prediction, and then we get new data and we realize, okay, that was wrong, and things like this. And there's like entire fields of science that can be shaken up by new data, like biology. But anyway, I do think my personal position is that it also is kind of important to fear climate change to some extent, not to let it control our lives and make us incredibly anxious, but I think we should be worried about it and fighting against it.
Yeah, I agree with like the anxious part. We shouldn't really be that anxious over it, especially like some people like saying I'm going to refuse to have kids because of these predictions scientists have made. Well, even though these predictions have proven to be false, it's just, we shouldn't really be too anxious over it.
Yeah, I mean, we should be, again, good stewards and keep that in our lives, but not be caught up and worried about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to end on that note. So, thanks for coming, and maybe we'll do this again and have some more current topics at some point.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Okay.
Another roundtable
All right.
discussion.
Take care.
Nice.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Do your own research.
Do your own research. And remember, God loves you.